Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are in philosophical midwifery to understand the nature of, the cause of, and what is needed to free ourselves from our problems. Now, as we are learning a paradigm, this applies to everyone, all human problems. So, that's something interesting. We are learning what we need to free ourselves from our problems, but we're also learning we're learning a paradigm which can be used as an art. So pretty neat. Okay, last time we talked about how to give birth to questions and the significance of giving birth to questions. And that is how we read, how we discover, creates the conditions for open-mindedness, creates the conditions for us to apply our dialectic. You can only apply the dialectic if you're wondering about something, if you've got a genuine question and a genuine curiosity. Now, before I start, I have been recommending another Twitch channel that is super awesome because the streamer addresses the situations, the most significant problems, not to do with our soul, but to do with our everyday life. She addresses those problems with a degree of care in reporting the facts, a degree of insightful reflection, understanding, empathy, and courage that I haven't really seen anywhere else. So it's a channel I recommend people follow if they want to stay up to date with the goings on in the world, but it's also presented in a very fun, friendly, warm, funny way. So it's a combination of fun and understanding. Now, I've been recommending this channel. It's she streams under the name Denims on Twitch. But funnily enough, as soon as I started recommending that channel, she has been banned for at least 30 days on Twitch because of her accurate, honest, genuine reflection on problems happening in the world and the problems certain people have in the public sphere who are functioning to support those problems or defend those problems, because she is helping people to understand that and address the counterattacks to understanding. She has been faced with those people who are functioning in that negative way to defend the beliefs and the way of being that manifest in the genocide that's happening right now. Because she is sharing the logos, which is understanding, genuine understanding to find the cause of and the principles behind the repeating cycles of behavior we see. Because she's applying that, she's been faced with the counterattack. What's the counterattack? That's something we are seeing as we read this. We are seeing that understanding the pathologos, the cause of our own negative repeating cycles of behavior. Okay, the pathologos, the fundamental false belief about ourself and reality that manifests in our negative action towards ourselves and in the world, our negative functioning according to a role that we become like and then eventually become identified with. That's the pathologos. It has a self-defensive mechanism. It tries to protect itself. So it will undermine the logos that has the potential to dissolve it. Now, we want to dissolve it because it's a psychic parasite. It's not true. It's a false belief. it manifests as unjust actions repeatedly. So we call that fate. It causes our problems. So as this is a fantastic demonstration of what happens when somebody shares the logos. Well, as we've been seeing, people rarely care about our opinions unless it challenges theirs, which was one of the causal elements to our pathologos. Our parental figures have spent their lives looking for situations where they can share their personal opinions and their personal fears. But no one cares about opinions. We care about understanding. That's why we pay money to go to college. But no one cares about our opinions. Why would they? Just because you believe something doesn't make it true. And but as we were reading, we seek it anyway. We seek situations where we can share our personal opinions and play the role of what we think it means to be knowing, cosplay as the knower. Now, it's kind of tricky in the world because the only people who really do care about your opinions are the people who are fighting back because your opinions challenges their opinions. Otherwise, why would they care what you think? Who cares? No one. So it's a tricky situation. Nevertheless, because of our soul's desire to actually have knowing, which has been usurped, it's been taken over by the more primal, primitive urge to be like our image of knowing. In other words, our soul seeks knowing, but when we're young, something else got in the way, an appearance of knowing. We are not seeking true knowledge, which would be philosophy. We're seeking to play out our imitation of that, which is unjust. It's not true, and it's not just. It's not actually kind. It's not actually caring. It's not actually rational. It's irrational and immature. So that's a kind of tragic irony that all our efforts in life are propelling us to be our model of injustice. Only because we mistakenly confuse it for justice. For justice, greatness, beauty, and what was the other term that we looked at last time? Greatness. Oh, those were the three: greatness, beauty, and justice. So we have to recognize that it isn't great. We recognize that it's not beautiful and it's unjust. We need to use our understanding to address this false image, to be able to free ourselves from it. Okay, so what threatens the existence of our false beliefs that cause our injustice and our problems? The logos. So when somebody, so we're talking about a danger in sharing your own personal opinions because no one cares unless you're challenging them, and then they only care to attack you or fight you. Well, there's another difficulty that is not a personal opinion, but actual truth. Actual truth and understanding, and a way of being where you're genuinely interested in understanding. You're a good faith actor, we call it nowadays. You genuinely care. You are genuinely insightful and thoughtful. You're following the logos. The logos is the threat to the pathologos, which is why our next stage of evolution and the paradigm for spirituality is the development into the logos. That's where we are as a species. So right now, there are people with a lot of weapons and power and money and influence who are playing out their pathologos on a mass scale. In the genocide happening in Palestine at the time of this recording. And equally so, there are people who are identified with that tribe, that culture, that group, or that have their own family tribe similar enough with the genociding people that they are siding with them. Likeness. The unjust tyrants murdering and torturing hundreds of thousands of people in order to enact a genocide of a race of people, that way of being is like a way of being to certain people who are defending it, supporting it, as a display of loyalty to their own personal ignorance, their own personal pathologos beliefs. So that's an issue. This has to be understood. Why? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to learn. We're here to understand. We're here to solve problems. And as we read, it's entirely possible to verify for oneself we live in an intelligible, understandable, and knowable universe. That's also a caring universe that extends a care to us that's universal, but also very specific, targeted for us and for our development. Meaning what? Meaning these issues that we are seeing is the bringing into light the implications of not doing philosophy and midwifery. If you don't master the logos, what happens? It plays out terribly. So these things we can't ignore. We need to understand. That's what we're here for. Only, as we've been saying, understanding in the logos threatens the existence of the most harmful ignorance and false beliefs. So, what happens when you are better? Well, that's what Denims is experiencing right now. I've been recommending her channel, but funnily enough, right when I have started to do that, she's been banned from her platforms because she is very thoughtfully, she's extending a level of care and thought and reflection, sharing understanding and breaking it down with extreme patience and clarity so that others can also understand the way she is, which is why I recommend the channel. But those people who are not functioning anywhere near that level of integrity, care, reflection, patience, but instead are defending the opposite way of being, ignorance, blind attack, defending false beliefs, not being interested in understanding at all, not seeking principles. So the exact opposite of her way of being, which reflects the logos. Those people are engaged in a counterattack. So the most ignorant people, loyal to the most harmful beliefs, are attacking some fantastic rare person who is doing the very thing they need to do to become better themselves. Now, this is, again, a physical manifestation of a principle that we are here to understand in philosophical midwifery. As above, so below. That's the metaphor way of reflecting on our life experiences that we were talking about last time. If this is what happens in the physical world, what does that tell us about the principles within our soul? Because we're all human beings. Others might reflect it in a way that's easier to see, but it is a reflection of self, ourselves, our psyche. So what can we learn? Well, if you are following along with this podcast, then you are engaged in the logos. Rational, mature reflection to understand our patterns and repeating cycles of problems, unjust behavior, self-sabotage, to get to the cause of it and address that cause with our highest level of integrity that we've been learning, our highest level of understanding, specifically the dialectic. So using the dialectic to understand the cause of our problems, and then using the dialectic to address that cause to become free of it. That's the logos. So really, one word, dialectic. Used in different levels, but it's the dialectic. That's what we're here for. Which is what? The dialectic is the functioning and the structure of the logos. So you are sharing the logos, you're reflecting the logos. Which means, if you are doing this, you have to expect counterattacks from the pathologos. Just as Denim's helping people understand the true nature of the genocide happening in Israel, and the nature of the people who are defending it, and the nature of the politicians and media personalities who are trying to confuse people and distract from our understanding. These are all very, very important things, functioning at a very high level. High level of what? The logos. So what is she experiencing? The counterattack. And that can be frustrating because, as we are going to learn as we keep reading, it's frustrating because the counterattack is from people who are operating at a much crappier level. It's frustrating because others are not showing the same care and reverence for our own understanding, our own highest experience. They're not showing the level of care and value for the logos that we have. Literally, the people attacking her they don't have principles. They talk out of both sides of the mouth. In other words, it's the people who, conservatives we call them, people who are blindly loyal or conserving a fundamental false belief. A fundamental false belief that gives them an identity, gives them a group. In other words, one rule for thee, different rule for me. Not principles. Not actually interested in understanding. And I've learned that the word for this is clip chimping. So instead of understanding, taking the video and picking out clips like a monkey, like a chimp, that can be taken out of context to make an enemy of the person. So once they're an enemy or a bad guy, you can justify ignoring the logos. Don't listen to this person. He's a naughty person. He's a bad person. Making an enemy so you can attack. What is that the opposite of? Dialectic. Dialectic is not about attacking. Dialectic is not about enemies. It's about understanding cooperatively. Maybe cooperatively is the wrong word, because you don't cooperate with people who are opposed to understanding. You lead. The logos leads, in fact. So, a friendly, compassionate, mature, rational approach to things is attacked by people who are embodying the opposite of those principles. Now, if we understand by our reading the nature of the pathologos, the universal pathologos, we can understand why that happens. And if we want to be our highest selves, participate in self and logos most fully, we need to understand the nature of the counterattack and anticipate it, expect it even, because that's the way the logos goes. That's the way the pathologos goes. So, interesting that one of the better people in the world who are participating in the higher level of the logos, helping people understand, using her intelligence and her compassion and humor and grace and fun to explain and help understand what's happening in the world, and also understand why it's happening, and understand the forces that are maintaining it, and understanding the forces that are trying to distract from our own understanding of it. A lot of good work. Fantastic person and streamer. Is currently suffering the effects of a counterattack from the very pathologos she is threatening by her participating in the logos. Hopefully, it's not going to be for long. It's a 30-day ban, which is, again, awful because that's her job. That's where her income comes from, I think. And hopefully someone within the ranks of Twitch is mature and rational enough to actually watch her streams and realize that she is operating in a very, very good way, very different from the pathologos driven people who are attacking her, and it'll be lifted. But for now, that's where we're at. So, metaphors. using that as a metaphor. But also, we want to be ourselves. We want to share in the logos. We want to express the truth and share understanding and care, justice as much as we can. Why? Because, as we've been seeing, our soul, whether we like it or not, seeks greatness, beauty, and justice. We want that stuff. So we want to be like Denims, or Socrates, or the author of this book, Dr. Pierre Grimes. The thing that we have to do is be able to uncover and discern the false model of these things, free ourselves from it with the logos and the dialectic, so we can actually go on our real quest to find out what true greatness is, what true beauty is, what true justice is, and absolutely it's functioning with the logos and through the logos at the highest possible levels. Which means we have to learn about this, because we're going to have to anticipate counterattacks from the people who aren't in this game. Because, newsflash, if you're this far along in the series, you are a very rare kind of a person, at least in this part of human history, which is great and needs to be celebrated. So it's not just about addressing the negative and the pathologos and the counterattack, it's about celebrating the positive. You're a good egg, some people say. And we have to get rid of what Socrates calls the wind egg. So, anticipate the counterattacks. And if you are learning and benefiting and applying, if you are doing the dialectic, you're doing the dialectic anyway. That's what we saw. Why? Because we are in a dialectic with our false model of these things, and all our life is playing out our roles within this standard, this fake model, based on appearance, giving us acceptance within a group, giving us our ideals and our standards for behavior, so that our life, whether we like it or not, is a dialectic between us and this false model, which, as we saw, we become like that role that we play out. We become identified with that role, become more entrenched with that false role. And I think last time we talked about how it becomes our persona, our way of being. Here we go. We're a living dialectic. It becomes our persona, our mask, our way of relating to ourselves and others. Right, so a nice example is, famously, the right-wingers and the conservative fascists, they yell, "The election is being rigged. You are rigging the election," while at the same time they are doing the very thing that they are accusing others of. It's their way of being. It's their own persona and mask. They are engaged in gerrymandering. They are engaged in voter suppression. They are engaged in a literal insurrection to try and overthrow the democratic process. While at the same time, it's their way of relating to others. They are accusing others of doing it. You are rigging it. Blah, blah, blah. At the time of recording, that's famously the narrative of the American conservative movement for the last 4 years or more. Actually, no, it's longer than that. It's part of their doctrine. Let's do all these things while attacking others for doing the things we're doing. Right, and ask the same thing. What happened to the Jewish people in Israel? They were genocided against. What are they doing to others? A genocide. Their fundamental cultural pathologos, the milieu of being a perpetual victim, is something they're identified with, and that's not news. If you If you like American comedy, you know that there are some fantastic American Jewish comedians, and their whole shtick is to be a perpetual victim, always complaining. The world is so hard on me. Like it's pretty obvious. Everyone knows it. It's Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's Larry David. It's Seinfeld. It's very well known. But unless they actually address it, making fun of it is a good start. Humor is important. Grace. Talked about that with Denims. But actually addressing the root cause, fundamental false belief of that culture, leading to them being a perpetual victim, playing that role. So if Denim's speaking up about what's happening, what do they say? Oh, we're being victimized by you telling the truth and sharing understanding and maturity, elevating the level of consciousness and functioning of all the people who are fortunate enough to share in your channel. But that makes me a victim. I'm going to cherry pick and purposely misrepresent what you're saying, conning, grifting, while knowing I'm grifting, because I'm attached and identified with this perpetual victim, while I'm going to do whatever I can to victimize you. Do unto others what was done unto me. This is another reason why we need to address our problems, because if we don't, we'll play it out to others. So, interesting. Lots of things to wonder about there. Oh, and if the examples I'm pulling at happen to be the way you were raised, if you happen to be raised Jewish, if you happen to be raised in a American conservative family or culture, then just take all those examples, remove the cultural belief or way of being or role that reflects your situation, and put in somebody else's. Go opposite end of the planet. What kind of role do Japanese people have? Right? What kind of image do Korean people identify with? How about the Germans? That's an easy one, because even the Germans know that they have a fundamental problem that they need to address before World War I, World War II, World War... What? They're aware of that. So yeah, pick out the Nazis. In other words, this isn't personal. This is universal and true for all of us. The issue is whether or not we want to be immature and say, yeah, everyone else, but not me. I am of the chosen people. Which is a fundamental immaturity and irrationality and a lack of integrity, and keeps us stuck in our problems. We keep playing out that negative role, we become identified with it, and we want to understand why, because the urge towards likeness that imitation provides is more fundamental and primitive than desire. Okay? So So here are ways we can generate new questions that we looked at last time, all of which can be seen as aspects of the dialectic, pushing the implications. Can you find a unifying theme within Jewish comedy, within Jewish historical problems? Going from the many to the one, what's the cause? Fundamental to understanding. Can you take the parts into a whole? Can you rise to a greater level of whole to see the parts? That's our principle. You can't solve problems from the level of whole that created them. In other words, you are not going to solve problems caused by beliefs by operating at the level of beliefs. You have to rise to a greater level of whole. That's understanding. That's why Denims and Socrates are being attacked, and why you will almost certainly be faced with a counterattack if you continue the Logos. But keep in mind, it's not true. It's a false belief, psychic parasite defending itself. Nevertheless, We can't solve problems with beliefs that are caused by beliefs. In other words, this is the immature drama that's happening. Well, I believe Jewish people are chosen people. Well, I believe everyone should have human rights. Well, I believe Muslims are just as good as Jewish people. Well, I believe, who cares? Because beliefs don't have to be true. You just have to believe them. And usually it's inherited. What makes something true? Understanding. We're rising to a level of understanding, which is also sharing in the Logos, which allows us a level of maturity and scope, the ability to see what's below us, to see the parts which are parts of a greater whole. And all of this we saw last time are aspects of the dialectic. So we can use the dialectic to not only structure our reflection to discover our problems, excuse me, address the cause of our problems once we discover it. We can use the same dialectic, the same paradigm of all paradigms, to pull out aspects of this paradigm to help us generate new questions. Why? To carry a question is to be on a quest. This is fundamental, because what is one of a unifying characteristic or theme of the people who are engaged in perpetual genocide, war, conflict, personal attacks, trying to get people banned on Twitter? They're all throwing opinions around, personal beliefs, debate. They're never going to get out of their problems. Why? Because no one's interested in doing anything other than defending their beliefs. They're not interested in rising to a greater level of whole that we call understanding or logos. Therefore, there's no integrity in their reflection. They will clip chimp, selectively pick out arguments that will justify the belief they're already carrying, a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's why the pathologos makes you stagnant and prevents growth, as well as causing problems, as well as causing unjust actions towards others, and so on. So that's the shadow of the ladder of the logos that we can climb. Doesn't go up anywhere. It stays flat on the ground. And the one that we looked at, metaphor, that was the last one we addressed. Now, metaphor is interesting because we talked about if our job here is to master this dialectic, the paradigm, the skill of self-reflection, understanding, and growth, purifying us from our problems when applied to what's false, allowing our evolution towards our highest goals when applied to true, our highest states of mind, our highest understanding, and our highest integration into our way of being, of functioning most artfully with that. That's all the dialectic. We recognize that the dialectic has two parts, two halves. What is true and what isn't true. And I still haven't replaced my mouse, but I will soon. Right. What if it is and what if it isn't? Is and isn't. Now, that's what we're getting into now. The next part of our reading is a dialectic which may give us a metaphor that, so the metaphor that we've been using today is as above, so below. As our understanding of pathologos can help us free ourselves from our internal conflicts, also it will be reflected on the global stage, as with the genocide, as with understanding why people try and silence people who share the logos and understanding, like denims, why people defend the most unjust actions globally, why you can vote for a pathologos party. As above, so below. So that's our higher level of soul that we can reflect on by looking at the lower level, the physical world, politics, as a metaphor. Vice versa, you can go up and down between levels, but you can also go sideways. Sideways is the same level, but if it is or if it isn't. That's That's what we're looking at now. So let's jump in and see and keep an eye out for the dialectic used to explain the cause of our pathologos. That's what we're reading. But see if we can see two sides, if it is and if it isn't. Let's jump in. Right. This is where we left off. Each pathologo scene is unique because the model itself was unique. The urge towards likeness that imitation provides, without which there could be no pathologos. Because the urge is more fundamental and more primitive than desire. That's where we're at. So here we go. If parental figures only appear with this kind of uniqueness under certain circumstances that are unusual and rare, then that rare event gains greater importance and significance. So there's, we have one option, option A. That's right on the board. Okay. So there's this unique way of appearing, which is an imitation of certain qualities, greatness, beauty, and justice. So we have side one. Only appear with this only appear. Just draw a line down the middle. Yeah. Only appear it's a unique way in this unique way under unique way unusually and rare. What follows? Now, because we are engaged in this activity of generating new questions by looking for metaphors going sideways, we can create a question. If this is the case, let's use a different color. So it's a kind of pushing the implications through metaphor. Sideways metaphor. If this, then this, which is itself an if. It's a hypothesis. It's not something we know. We are carrying a hypothesis, generating a hypothesis, generating a question. Then we can say, they appear. So it's appear this way, expressing their highest idea of greatness, beauty, and justice. Appear that way. Often. So if that's the case, what we're reading, then this would be the case over here. See if this pans out. Now, this is key because we've been talking about what do we want to do? Use the logos. Often. Yeah, people are going to not like it if you challenge their ignorance, but so what? We want to show ourselves, know ourselves, and show ourselves often. Be ourselves all the time, often. Be our greatest, most excellent, most beautiful. Often. Or always. Often. So rare, often, or always. There's another possibility. That's the opposite of rare and unusual. The less they reveal of themselves, the more the need for that particular involvement. The more they reveal themselves in a particular way, the more significant it will be to discover the reason for the repetition. If, however, parental figures have a wide range of revealing themselves, I see, then any single pathologo situation or circumstance would have less impact. So what we're seeing is we didn't really get it right, did we? So only appear in this unique way, unusual and rare. We said appear in that unique way. We didn't change the opposite of this. So we appear in many ways. So what do we say? And by the way, it's not even appearance. We could even make that the opposite. So the opposite of appearance is true revealing selves. That's the opposite of appearance. Revealing ourselves in this unique way. What's the opposite of that? In a wide range of ways. A wide range of ways. Often or always. You can add that in. That one isn't in the text, but it's the only thing that's left out. So maybe our author has given us one puzzle piece to fill in. And by the way, maybe we wouldn't have been able to recognize that this part was missing unless we were playing the game of ordering it, reading in a certain kind of way, using metaphor, pushing implications, and using the dialectic to read in this new kind of way. We're learning a new way of reading. It's not passive. We're not passively watching a movie. We're actively playing a game. We are Sherlock Holmes, who isn't a wizard, but I don't have a sound drop for Watson saying, "You're a detective, Sherlock." Also, if we're not in the game of philosophy, we won't recognize the significance of always being in self, or sharing in the logos, or expressing the logos, or the fact that we are always a dialectic anyway. Our choice is, are you going to be this one or are you going to be that one? Another reason why picking teams and excluding people, or fighting people, or picking enemies is absurd, because every human being, by nature of being a human being, everyone is doing this anyway. The only real choice we have is, do you want to do this? Do you want to express the dialectic you're living out anyway this way? Or do you want to be a blind slave to your ignorance and play out the dialectic in the worst possible way for your soul? Do you want to be conscious or a slave? So what's the question? Kind of fits. So to say you can't do it, it's genetic, or you're a woman, or you're not born in the right part of the dirt. Doesn't make sense. Because we always want to be the self, and we're always doing either of these anyway. So interesting. And good news for you if you're in the game, because you have the opportunity of hearing that question, what is called within the understanding of the hero's journey, which is used, we talk about this often, the call to adventure. Call to adventure. Offering you to cross the threshold into a new game. This is the new game. To be consciously doing the dialectic. Following the logos instead of the pathologos. And we're getting it. So what's curious about the call to adventure and the opportunity to cross the threshold into a new world is often one of the stages is supernatural aid. Often it's a Gandalf figure who comes and goes to the Shire and tells Frodo, "You're a wizard, Harry." Or, okay, I got it mixed up a little bit. Or it's a mysterious spaceman who says to Luke, "You're a Jedi, Harry." Jedi. You're a Jedi. You're a Jedi, Harry. That's what he says to Luke. Supernatural aid. Now, what's curious about that is, where does the logos come from? Remember our beginning? Let's reread this because this is one of the best things ever written, so might as well read it. Where are we getting all this logos from? If it's a universal thing, if it's a principle, it has to exist outside of time and space, making it a principle. Yeah, it's a fantastic movie. He says, "You're a Jedi, Harry." It's called The Hunger Games. It's a fantastic film. I think. So let's read the quote. Welcome to the chat, by the way. It isn't, so this is one of the greatest things ever written. And so let's read it again. So supernatural aid is one of the archetypes in the hero's journey that all screenwriters oh no, thank you for being here, have to read. Now, we can ask, well, hang on a second, if there's an archetypal hero's journey that's used in all of these films we've been talking about and all of mythology, the guy, George Lucas, George Lucas worked closely with Joseph Campbell, who penned the book Hero of a Thousand Faces, or Hero's Journey. One of the stages is the supernatural aid and the call to adventure, crossing the threshold. Now, can we look for supernatural aid being bestowed to us through the logos in what we're doing? By rereading this awesome first paragraph. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. I'm pretty sure I'm right about the Star Wars thing. Yeah. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen it. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, he defeats a golem, and then Baby Yoda is there, I think. And that's the Mandalorian. Yeah, best thing ever written is crazy, yeah. So I think it's up there. Let's have a look. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. The verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. So again, intelligibility and care, benefit artfully. The communication from the mind, the communications from the mind are as profound as they are utterly appropriate to our circumstances. For while the scope of the mind is pervasive, again, these are things we are not to believe. We can prove for ourselves, understand. We're developing understanding. This isn't belief. We're moving from belief to understanding. And we have to verify our understanding in a kind of direct experience. And we've been told it's entirely possible to do so. So this is the call to adventure. By the way, would you like to play a new game? So part of the hero's journey is you enter a new world. Like maybe you grew up thinking there is no meaning, a nihilist family, or there is kind of meaning, but it's all just opinions, relativist upbringing. Or maybe you grew up thinking there is a God, but he has nothing to do with me. We are just ants. There are lots of different ways of viewing the world. Now, the call to adventure is this opening paragraph. By the way, you can step out of. In Star Wars, he has to leave the moisture farm. In Harry Potter, he has to leave his bedroom under the stairs of his step-parents' house. Harry Potter, the hobbits have to leave the Shire. You have to leave the world that you are familiar with. It's an archetype. Now, we are doing the actual thing that the archetypes are metaphors or examples of. So what's the new kind of universe? A universe that is intelligible and caring. Do we just have to believe it because Gandalf is saying it? No. Understand and prove. How do we get that? That's the work. That's the game. That's the quest. Notice you have to start, that's the beginning of the quest. Then you have to do the work and have fun, hopefully, and share the quest with friends. That's the community that we're developing here. In other words, Gandalf doesn't say, oh, by the way, you have to, get rid of the One Ring and I'm going to do it for you. That wouldn't be much of a story. You have to do it. Different from belief. You just have to go along with what you're told. Okay? The mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. The mind is, the communications are profound and utterly appropriate to our circumstances. For while the scope of the mind is pervasive, its precision is always directed to what is personally significant. You matter in the highest way. Very different from someone who grew up nihilist, which means there is no matter. Nothing matters. There isn't even matter. There isn't even physical world. Okay, even people who are materialists think, well, there's matter, there's physical matter. But a nihilist doesn't even think there's that. Not even matter matters. This is very different. They have to leave the Shire to discover a different way of understanding the universe and proving it. We will demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep, each and every one of them are like doorways into the richest source of insights into our life. What we discover through these insights is that the mind itself provides ample evidence of its own goodness and intelligibility. So key words: goodness, intelligibility, benefit, care, precision. Key ways of functioning: pervasive and precise. So definition, demonstration, division, key divisions. It divides into every area of your life, divides into your goals, your problems, your daydreams, your fantasies, your dreams. Definition, demonstration, division. And what's the conclusion? The final step in the dialectic. Mind is providing it. In other words, you don't have to step outside the system. You don't have to believe Gandalf. You have to believe anyone. Why? Because the thing you're trying to understand, mind, the nature of the universe, mind itself, is the one providing the evidence. It's a direct connection. There's no one getting in the way. There's no priest between you and God. There is no professor between you and reading the text for yourself. There is no interpreter of Plato that you read instead of reading the book, like the way sometimes philosophy is taught in some schools. No middleman. So interesting invitation, right? So where is our aid coming from? Mind. Universe. A kind of supernatural aid. So interesting that, and we've already talked about Joseph Campbell in our first chapter, ran into Pierre Grimes. And in that meeting, he said, by the way, you're starting to notice, you're looking at the many different mythological traditions in the world, and you're noticing a commonality. You're on the right path. By the way, are you in Plato? Because that's where you get the paradigm. Now, what is that? That's an introduction to the logos. What does the logos threaten? The pathologos. So when you are called to participate in the logos, called to adventure, called to cross the threshold, most people say, no, screw you. Piss off, bucko. Get out of here. I'll fight you. Or I'm going to make fun of you. Or I'll get you banned on Twitch. Or I'll genocide you. Because most people are governed by fate. That more primal and fundamental urge to be like their models of greatness and beauty and justice before they had developed the logos, when they were in a dependent relationship. And we're reading right now, in the rare moments where our parental figures showed themselves in a unique way. Meaning we are our own prison wardens. We are defending our own ignorance. Specifically when a Gandalf comes along. When the very person who can help us comes along. Which is curious. That's the human thing. But fortunately, we are engaged in the logos. We're engaged in understanding. We're doing our best to generate questions. Questions can bring us out of that certainty. I'm certain that I know the truth. That's what ties us to our false beliefs. But having a question puts you open and curious and wondering states of mind. Making you open to verifying for yourself that we live in an intelligible and caring universe that is constantly communicating with us and for our benefit. Pervasive scope, precisely directed, dividing it up in every area of your life, choice of goals, fantasies, daydreams. What was it? What are the divisions? See, this is memorization. So the dialectic also helps with memorization. Memorization is the first step before organizing it into the dialectic. So before philosophy, which is dialectic, there is philomathesis, which is remembering. Problems we face, choice of goals, problems we face, daydreams, fantasies, and the dreams. So there's 4 divisions. So, interesting. I think it's interesting. Okay. So, the more we reveal ourselves in a wide range of ways, and that means any single pathologo circumstance or situation will have less impact. So let's write that on the board. Therefore, this is key. Once you start to understand the significance of this, you realize that until you've completed philosophical midwifery, you've been unknowingly infecting your loved ones with your own problem, in particular your children. So people who are in this game, they realize, oh gee, Yesterday, my child was in a really open, free state of mind, and I don't know why, but I had this urge to yell at them. And I recognized, because I'm learning about midwifery and the pathologos, I recognized that was a pathologos origin scene. What do I do about it? This. Reveal yourself in a different way, not through yelling, involving yourself in their own play where it didn't involve you, but this way. By the way, let's sit down and reflect on what I did. I want to reflect. I want to be honest. I want to reveal myself. I didn't like what I did. I don't yet understand what I did, but I know it's not true and it's not just. I apologize and I'm going to do better. That's a way of revealing yourself. Different way. Revealing yourself. Because we're not supposed to get it right first time. Anyone who thinks that they're right all the time, they were born right. These immature people who are closed to the dialectic and are just debating, defending their own ignorance that they grew up with, as though they knew everything as a toddler. That's so stupid. Doesn't make sense. Why do it? Well, there are many reasons why. It's what it means to be an alpha. Act certain. Fake it till you make it. Just be confident. All right? But that's a scam. It's an act. We want to reveal ourselves, which means you don't have to be right the first time, because life is a relationship. We are learning. We're in a relationship. That's the dialectic, a relationship between two things. Self and other is the two terms in the dialectic, giving us definition, self to self, demonstration, self to others, division, others to others, and conclusion, others all the way back to self. Now, we are playing out a dialectic we're seeing based on our false image of greatness, beauty, and justice. There's us, there's our relationship, there's our dialectic. That becomes our role, that becomes our persona, that we become like, and then eventually we identify with. Identify is another way of saying we equate it to self. We're learning about the self. We are becoming more ourselves. No, we're not. We're becoming more like the opposite of ourselves. Pathologos self. So the call to adventure, say, hey, by the way, you can prove that for yourself and verify your understanding. So prove it based on a way of understanding and verify that for yourself, that we're actually in a different relationship with a profoundly caring and profoundly intelligible universe that's always communicating to you and for your benefit. Which dialectic would you rather be in? We can call this the logos. That's the intelligibility and care that's eternal, all pervasive. That's what we're learning. And this is the pathologos. The sick, false beliefs. Simple. There's just two things, pathologos. And the pathologos isn't even a thing. It's a shadow of the thing. So are we talking about this? Relationships. Yeah, it's good that you caught yourself doing what might be a pathologos origin scene, because you're not supposed to get it right. Because it's a relationship. You're in a relationship. Talk about it the next day. Meet your friend for a coffee. And if your children are too young for coffees, have some milk and cookies. Why? Because if you reveal yourself in lots of different ways, as often as possible, in recognizing you're not supposed to be right, you're supposed to be embracing this kind of relationship, and any single Pathologos. Pathologos. Situation or circumstance. Circumstance will have less of an impact. Will have less. You will be functioning more justly. Less of an impact. Hooray. The consequence of rejecting this message would mean calling into question the integrity of those who appeared sincere and beautiful. Ooh. Are you willing to sacrifice appearance of sincerity and beauty for truth? Or are you going to stay loyal? Why do people like Trump? Doesn't seem to be very smart, doesn't seem to care about the people at all. An appearance of sincerity and beauty. All right. So again, as above, so below. Who is your Trump? That's the question. So, calling into question the integrity of those who appeared sincere and beautiful, making it impossible to continue to function as before. Interesting. To challenge the pathologos would require courage and understanding. Okay, so call into the question the imperial. Okay, so this will go under here. So you'd be calling into question there's our beloved question, calling into question the integrity of those who appeared sincere and beautiful. Sincere and beautiful. How dare you? This is the prettiest I can pretend to be. How dare you challenge me? Okay, this would require courage. Requires courage. Why? Because this blind obedience to our appearances, if we're used to, it's comfortable, it's familiar, it feels right. This won't feel right at the beginning. That's courage. To do what you understand to be true, even though it might feel like it ain't. Requires courage. And what courage? Courage isn't stupidity. It's not courage to be scared of charging the army on your own, but then charging the army on your own. That's silly. You're just going to get shot. You're not going to defeat a whole army on your own. Courage also requires courage and understanding. Notice, what if you stay on this side of the line? If you don't accept the call to adventure, someone's come along and said, hey, by the way, it's entirely possible to verify that we live in a caring and understandable universe, knowable universe too. And by the way, you're already in a dialectic with what's false. That's causing your problems and your unjust actions. So why don't you do what you're here to do and jump on the other side of the line? Go on the quest to discover the logos to engage in the proper dialectic, the proper relationship with self that you're here for. Now, what if you've heard that Gandalf has come to your village and you stay on this line? That's what we can do. What would be the opposite? Okay, on this side of the line, we would have cowardice. What's the opposite of courage? Cowardice. What's the opposite of understanding? Beliefs. False beliefs. Okay, so if we only reveal ourselves, let's make this blue as well. We only reveal ourselves in a unique way and only in rare situations. So our author is giving us sometimes this, sometimes this, sometimes this. And so we have to realize this is because he's helping us learn. He's not just telling us. Because just telling people is less. How are you developing an understanding? How are you going to verify for yourself? Through your understanding and your direct experience, if you're just operating at the level of beliefs. This is metaphor. You can help. Okay, that's what we talked about last time. You can help discover the problems that are there to be solved by metaphor. You recognize a pattern, as above, so below, or in this instance, as on the left, so on the right, as what is, so what isn't. The two parts of the dialectic. If the self is, if you think the self doesn't exist, what follows? Dialectic is, if the subject exists, the subject can be the self. If the self doesn't exist, what follows? Well, you still think you have a self, it's just an appearance. So by saying if it doesn't exist doesn't mean it doesn't have any. Existence specifically means existence in the realm of reality, being. Which means it's directly apprehendable and knowable. It's intelligible. That's the reality we can directly experience, the self that exists. But if the self doesn't exist, and a lot of people think that there is no such thing other than the physical world, and nihilists don't even think that's real, then what follows? This. You still have some idea of yourself, it's just not existing. It's a false belief based on appearances. So what? So if we recognize that there is a way of discovering questions by recognizing there's a pattern behind good ways of thinking, good written texts, then we can discover what we need to fill out. Just like if you're playing a video game, this is one we use all the time, and you're walking down a corridor. You're walking down a corridor in a game. So here are you, walking down a corridor, and you realize, oh, there's a statue, or there's a painting on the wall, and there's a person. And then next, there's a painting next to that, and there's a painting next to that. There's a person with a hat, and then there's a person with long hair. If it's a game, they're probably somber. And then there's a person with curly hair. And you notice, oh, this person has a red gem in their eye. And so does this person. And they also have a blue gem in their eye. And so does this person. But then this next picture is blank. You have established a pattern. You have established a connection between things, as above, so as this, so next door, as this, so next door, so that you can recognize that there is a missing gem to be put into this eye. So you know that your job in the game is to go and hunt for that missing blue gem. And once you find it, you know where to put it. That's how games are made. So what? That's metaphor. What we are learning is, if our author is giving us establishing a pattern, there is a rare and unique way of, an unusual and rare way of appearing in a unique way of expressing yourself based on a kind of image. But also there's a different way. You can reveal yourself in a wide range of ways, often or always. Or established a sameness. Realizing that there are paintings or faces with eye holes. Now, sometimes he'll give us something over here, which means we have to, fill out this one over there. This is where the missing gem is. But we've been given these two, which means we've got a missing gem here and here. Which means what? Which means we can play. We can actually engage. We are not passively, we are developing our own understanding. Different from the pathologos, which is based on belief, where you are kind of passive in a certain way. You don't ask questions. It's different from being taught. It might help you make sense of things. How come I've got a friend who's really smart? He even goes to college to learn how to understand things. But when I bring up a certain topic about self and reality, or the nature of the divine, or the understandability of reality, then all of a sudden he becomes irrational. And even when I make very good, solid arguments, he doesn't go along with it. Why? He didn't learn his belief through understanding. So he can't unlearn it through understanding. That's why we need midwifery. It's an imitation of an appearance. He has to, if he's willing to accept, if he's got courage and he values understanding, he has to go to the origin scene to unlearn it the way it was learned. Going back to that false belief and addressing it with understanding and courage. Now, how often does that happen? How rare is it? How many Luke Skywalkers are there? How many Harry Potters are there? It's rare. So if you're in this game, good for you. And that's not patronizing, that's true. It's rare. It's literally extremely rare. Because of what it costs. We have to call into question of those who appeared sincere and beautiful. Who wants to do that? Who wants to get rid of their beloved images of their loved ones? Just because they happen to be wrong. Don't we want to protect what we love? Now, once we realize it's not truly sincere and beautiful, we might love it less. That's important. So any single pathologos situation or circumstance will have less of an impact if we only show ourselves based on a kind of appearance and only in a rare and unusual circumstances. And let's fix this. Let's fill in the missing eye of the painting. Pathologos. Situations. Greater impact. You will do more injustice to the ones that you care about. So what's the opposite of calling into question the integrity of the appearance of sincerity and beautiful? Blind loyalty. Now, you do your own. Like, what do you think is the opposite of calling into question the integrity of theirs who appeared sincere and beautiful? I'm saying blind loyalty to appearances of sincerity and beauty. Blind loyalty to appearances of sincerity and beauty that lack integrity. Interesting. Do you know anybody who has a blind loyalty to their appearance of sincerity and beauty, even though they argue in bad faith, even though they're not actually interested in understanding, even though their appearances that they're loyal to are stupid or harmful or based in tradition and belief and religion and whatever else? Do you know such people? How well are they doing at escaping their fate and having courage and pursuing understanding? Well, we gave an example at the start of this podcast of someone who's doing this and is being attacked by people who are this. And we need to recognize it when we have that. When we start on the path of understanding the logos and the dialectic that requires courage to walk, it's much easier. Well, it's not easier. You're going to suffer in many, many different ways, in all the possible ways. Your choice of goals, your daydreams, your fantasies, your, what was it? I'm missing one. You are going to suffer based on a problem in the goals that you choose, in the problems you face will cause suffering. Your dreams and fantasies will reflect the same kind of suffering. Daydreams and the dreams that visit you in your night will, that nighttime, will all reflect suffering. So it's not actually easier. That's the irony. You just believe it's easier because it's familiar. Right? So but this takes courage, doing what's unfamiliar, because it's true and beneficial, intelligible and caring, and the path of understanding. What's understanding? Dialectic in the logos. What's the real word for understanding? Dianoia. Why? Because dianoia applies to being. Beliefs apply to our physical experience. Right? So, use it to recognize when a part of you says, hey, conform. Don't question the integrity of people who appeared sincere and loving and beautiful. Just be blindly loyal to appearances. You can say, oh, by the way, voice, I know you. I've heard you before. If I listened to you, I would have cowardice. I'd be adhering to false beliefs. I don't want cowardice and false beliefs. I want courage and understanding. That's what I'm here for. Doesn't feel like it yet. That's courage. To go against what feels right, comfortable, familiar, and follow what you understand. So, as we said, charging the enemy isn't courage if you're on your own. You also have to have understanding. You have to be an understanding that you can actually defeat the enemy. Maybe if you're Naruto or something, you can charge the army because you have an understanding that you have that ability. But courage is not just going against your feelings, it's following understanding to go against your feelings. That's why we have understanding there next to courage. It requires courage and understanding. Let's keep reading. To challenge the pathologos require a courage and understanding that is found only rarely, even among the mature. Right? We've been talking about our friend Denims, but also any of you who have been watching this channel this far. It's not a big group. So, only found rarely. Whoops, wrong color. So you're a rare breed. A good egg. Only found rarely. Even among the mature, is that it? Yes. Even among us. Among us. Among. Is that how you spell among? No, it's no you. A-M-O-N-G. Among the... So super rare for a child to do this, as we've been seeing the implications. But even among the mature, even us adults. So we get one, we fill in the other. So this is common. It's common to have cowardice and be loyal to false beliefs and appearances of sincerity and beauty that you grew up with because of these rare experiences, these rare moments where our parents showed themselves by mimicking an appearance that was done to them, passing on the family tradition, the family curse, giving a great impact. This blind loyalty to the appearances and our false belief and the cowardice to change our minds is common. Common. If you think we can add more, then please do. I encourage you to be doing your own dialectics. Only found rarely, found commonly, even among the mature. Maybe you can find more of this to put the opposite in. That's the fun. Play, have some fun. And if you want to share it, you can join our Discord for free and you can share your work. We have a section where you can share your work. I did this. I saw this part of the text and I noticed a pattern of the dialectic. Here it is. Share your insights. Why? Because you are revealing yourself. But no one wants to hear me do a dialectic on this paragraph that we've been reading. What? Bollocks, that's over here. Reveal yourself. Share your highest understanding with courage, especially if it actually has integrity because you're applying the dialectic and you're sincerely find it beautiful. That's the game. Now, because it's rare to find people on this quest, then it's important to have a community of people or have friends who are also in this game. It's early days, but that's what we're developing in our Discord. So again, it's not easy. You're going to have blocks and counterattacks and challenges, and it's going to be weird. It's going to feel weird until it doesn't. It's going to be confusing until it's not. It's going to seem complicated until it's simple. It's going to require effort until it is effortless. But it wouldn't be much of a video game. It wouldn't be much of a story. It wouldn't be much of a hero's journey if you begin having reached the end. It wouldn't be much of a concert if you just played one chord and say, that's the end. Well, what about the journey? How am I supposed to develop if it starts easy? So, yeah. I'm just putting one word in there, but I'm sure that can be improved upon. And if you have the desire to do so, please do. And encourage your friends who are starting in this game too. Be like this. And if your friend says, I don't want to do that, I want to do something else, say to them, and then say to them, I don't want to eat a monkey. I want to explore the logos and dialectic, become rational and mature. Don't want to eat a monkey. Right? We find that some subjects do return to their parents and families and challenge the pathologos. Wow. In such cases, we find it takes an unusual level of commitment and courage, so there's another word, commitment, to successfully challenge the family pathologos, which is something we could not expect among the immature. So if you're a mature person, especially if you've left the house, the family house, and you have some independence, it's a bit easier. We can't expect this from children. Sometimes it happens, I bet, but we can't really expect it from babies. But this is the last part. Okay, so we can return to our parents and families and challenge the pathologos. That would be in side B. Let's find a color and put it on the board. What are we doing? We are returning to our parents. Zoom in a bit. Returning. What happens at the end of the hero's journey? You return home, having leveled up. Harry returns to whatever. Frodo returns to the Shire, having usually you come back with a new power, a new ability in the hero's journey. So Luke goes on an adventure, levels up, overcomes challenges, slays the dragon, and so on, and becomes a Jedi. Now we can return to his problem that he had at home, the problem of the Empire or whatever, having Jedi powers now. So what are we doing? We're going through this process to level up our ability of the dialectic and logos. And then what happens? Some people are able to return. Okay, so we've got some. Let's put in the word some as well. Some return home to their parents. With what? With their level up, with their logos, with their dialectic, with a new learning, a new maturity that we didn't have when we were kids. Return to their parents. Parents and families. They all have their own roles. They all support. They're all blindly obedient to appearances and false beliefs, which is very common. And challenge the pathologos. And challenge. Uh-oh, what happens when you challenge people's ways of being? They will want to get mad at you. Well, there are levels of ignoring, making fun of, casting out, ganging up on, excluding, exiling, threatening, and maybe even murder. Ooh. Have we been talking about murder on a mass scale that's happening in our world now? Because certain people have a certain way of function that challenges their way of being, and those who are participating in the logos to understand it, report on it properly, and reflect on its causes, the logos, like our friend Denham's, are being attacked by these jokers. Yours. To be expected once you understand it. So what are we doing? Challenging the way of being. Challenge. What are we challenging? We're challenging what's false and most harmful And hey, if we are all here to do those two things, uncover and understand our false belief that cause our problems, what Socrates calls purification. And the other thing we have to do is use that freedom to actually discover the truth about self and reality, perfection, purification and perfection, the two parts of the dialectic, what is true and what isn't true. If that's what we're here for, then maybe when you go back and challenge your parents and your family members, you give them the possibility to awaken to a higher quest. You're inviting them to a higher way of functioning. Hey, jerks, this is what you've been doing. It's not true. It's not just. It functions unjustly. It's not beautiful. It's not sincere. You were acting. You were playing an appearance that was done to you. I'm out of the game. What about you? Ever wondered why you do it? Now, it's a challenge that has the potential to free you from your problems, but also has the possibility of waking them up to what they're here for. So, challenge the pathologos. Challenge the pathologos. The false belief about self and reality that we are in a dialectic with our whole lives, that becomes our way of being. We become most like that role, and then we become identified with it, and then we pass it on. Then we have a question, what happens to our death and our reincarnation? Now you're in the Phaedo. Socrates talks about that. In such cases, we find it takes an unusual level of commitment and courage. So what does it take? To return to the Shire and challenge the way of being. An unusual level of commitment and courage. Unusual level of commitment. Hey, this game is going to knock you around a bit. Going to go through ups and downs. The greater your insight, the greater the counterattack, which means you have to stay committed. Commitment. M-M-I-T. It helps if you can anticipate the ups and downs and understand them. Oh yeah, I'm feeling kind of sick, but I had that profound insight. I was able to let go of a profound problem I was repeating my whole life. Every 3 months I got sick. Every time I talked to my crush, I got anxious. Every time I applied for the job, I woke up late. I saw it. I saw how it was part of a tradition. I freed myself from it. I leveled up. So I recognize this illness that I have now, or this extreme doubt I have now, or this extreme tiredness, or whatever it is simply an expected counterattack to my insights to get me to undermine it and give it up and go back over here. Not real, it'll pass. Having that understanding helps. So what do we have? An unusual level of commitment. And courage. And courage. Courage again. Repetition. Now, why does that matter? And courage. We've already said courage. Well, here's a clue. In this section, our author has given us a clue. The less they reveal of themselves, the more the need for that particular enjoyment. Further, the more they reveal themselves in a particular way, the more they do this certain thing, the more significant it will be to discover the reason for the repetition. He is telling us there is a reason for the repetition in our parental figures repeating a certain way of being at certain times, usually when you're doing your best. Now, he's also telling us a clue. There is a reason for him doing repetition. If you see something like that, have a question. Oh, okay. If he mentioned there's a reason for repetition, could he be not just defining it, but demonstrating that himself? Just as when we read Socrates, he defines virtue, he defines the exercise of the dialectic, which is the exercise of philosophy, but he also demonstrates it. Definition and demonstration, the first two categories of the dialectic. He's given us a clue. What is he repeating? Courage. What's the reason for the repetition of the word courage? Oh, there's a question for us. It's helping us. He's communicating for our benefit. It takes an unusual level of commitment and courage to successfully challenge the family pathologos. So here we have the word success. To success, which means there is a goal at the end that we can judge. How successful was our challenging? Did we actually become free of a block and problem that we've had that's weighing our souls down, causing our problems, our negative states of mind, our blocks to our highest goal? Was it successful or not? In other words, we can solve our problems. Successfully challenge. See, challenge is repeated again. What's the reason for the repetition? The family pathologos. So we want to learn how artfully, how skillfully we can return back to the Shire, or return back to the Empire, or return back to wherever. For us, we're not playing it out in a metaphor. If you do write stories or you make films, this is your model to make your character follow. It's the archetype, it's the paradigm. But we are returning home. We want to know, okay, how can we most skillfully and excellently, masterfully learn the logos, learn how to do midwifery, so that when we do return back to challenge the family pathologos, we do it successfully. We actually do become free. So interesting. We have to judge how well we do as a standard. It's not just make-believe. So, which is something we could not expect from the immature. So we could not expect this level of successful challenging, which requires commitment and courage and understanding from the immature. What does that mean? Well, we can say, well, one level it's the children when you're a kid, but another level it's mature adults. What does it mean to be a mature adult? Petty, childish, clinging on to our false bullshit we grew up in because I love mummy and daddy and they're never wrong, and my daddy can beat up your daddy, and my mummy's a saint, and she told me that Jesus is this and devil is that, and Muslims are like this and they're never wrong, and I hate you if you disagree. That's immature childishness. How many adults act that way? How many leaders of states act that way? How many people vote for leaders who reflect that same way of being they are stuck in? How many people vote for the most immature politician? How many leaders of big businesses are ridiculously childish and immature? So it's rare to develop a kind of level of maturity where we are able to sacrifice what we dearly cling to as children to be rational, to be fair, to develop courage, to free yourself from your problems, to free yourself from passing your problems on. Again, rare. Found rarely even among the mature, even the people who do have a mature approach to their own development. They leave this game. I've seen many of them go, oh, I've gone far enough. See ya. So stay in the game requires not just a maturity and a understanding and courage, it requires a unusual level of commitment. Once you start having success, don't cash out until you go all the way. That's what you're here for. And by the way, if you do go all the way, maybe turn around and help those other people up the ladder too. We could not expect this from the immature. It's also important. You might be the sort of person who has this level of integrity. You have such a deep care for understanding and truth, or you have such important, personally meaningful goals that you're willing to have this level of courage and integrity and commitment and understanding to free yourself from your false beliefs, even if you're addicted to them. You might be that sort of person, but you might be in a conversation with someone who isn't. This might be key. You might be able to use your understanding to recognize, oh, you've got that problem. That reflects your family. That reflects your culture. That reflects your religion. That reflects your ancestors. Oh, I can see it all because I'm learning the art. Just like a doctor with the art of medicine, someone comes in with, I don't know, pancreatitis. Is that a thing? Sounds like it should be a thing. You can see it. Oh, you've been eating too much candy. You've been drinking too much alcohol. Your liver's sick. I can see. It's obvious because I have the art. That's what we're developing. But not the art of the body, the health and sickness of the body, but the health and sickness of our soul. I'm going to point somewhere, but our soul is not physical, so I can't point anywhere. Soul. Our soul. That's what we're learning, which is important. Just as a doctor probably won't be able to explain all of his medical art to his patients, so too, it might be unfair to expect your level of maturity, your level of understanding and courage from others who are immature. You might be able to see it, but be gentle. So it's not mean to judge other people as immature, it's mean not to, if it's true. So, be gentle. So we've got some signs, some things on one side. Let's do the other side now. Let's make this line bigger. Make it bigger. 40. Right down here. There we go. Now, we're filling out, we're solving the puzzles in the game. Some return to their parents and families and challenge the pathologos. So what does that mean? Most, whoops. Oh, and by the way, you might be asking, well, my parents have passed away. That's okay. You can play this out in role playing. You can imagine, like in Midwifery, the midwife will say, imagine they're here now. Maybe they are listening in some kind of a way. And what would you say to them? But also in our lives, you might find yourself running into people just like them. Your boss, the guy at the gym who takes your treadmill every day or whatever. You might find yourself running into people who reflect the same way of being, giving you the opportunity to answer them or successfully use your understanding, maturity, commitment, development to successfully challenge them as a surrogate. Or just imagination. Either way works. Or, yeah, if they've already passed on. Most don't return to parents and families and never challenge the pathologos. So most are stuck in what Socrates calls the chains of fate. He uses the word chains, to be chained in a prison cell or to be chained in an underground cave. He uses that metaphor often to talk about being chained to the pathologos. Now, he doesn't use the word pathologos. That's an interesting puzzle about the difference between Socrates and the person who recorded Socrates, Plato, because the word philosophical midwifery comes from Socrates. He was this. But there's a question of whether or not he was able to pass on this art to Plato, because Socrates was murdered. What? Socrates, someone sharing in midwifery, sharing this gift to humanity, being the most rational, the most mature, sharing the logos, was killed by the government and everyone else who didn't like what he was doing because it was challenging their way of being. Who would have guessed? We would have guessed. But he was murdered by the state when Socrates was only like 26. So it might have been too young for Plato to have mastered this art. Nevertheless, we can see it in there. We can see it, even though Plato doesn't make it explicit, that's what we are doing. That's what we read in the first chapter. We're going back to the Platonic tradition. We're going back home to our home philosophy. Now, Platonic philosophy isn't the way it's taught today. One philosophy among many. Kant's philosophy, Hegel's philosophy, Brand's philosophy, Scandlin, Scruton, Burke. Okay, some people talk that way. That's not Platonic philosophy. Philosophy is just the philosophy. If it's true, then it's true. So sometimes it's called the perennial philosophy, the parent philosophy. Back before when it became many different opinions, which Socrates calls the opposite of philosophy, philodoxia, the love of opinions. So we are returning back to our parental philosophy, having improved it by adding philosophical midwifery to the logos and dialectic. Just as we are returning home to our parents with philosophical midwifery, just as Harry Potter returns home, Frodo returns to the Shire, and so on and so on. Most never don't return to their parents and families, and never challenge the pathologos. Why? It's an unusual level of commitment and courage to successfully challenge. So what's usual is, what's common is cowardice and what's the opposite of commitment? Let's get rid of this one. Commitment. What's the opposite of commitment? I don't know. You figure that out as a viewer. Flakiness, frivolousness, giving up. Common is giving up. Let's say that, giving up. Now, as we read, we might learn certain key terms, which means we can come back, return back home to this diagram, having improved our logos by reading, and we can replace giving up with a different word. That's the game. It's a process. It's a relationship. You go on a journey and you return home having leveled up. But that's not the end of the journey. There's Harry Potter episode 2. There's Star Wars episode 3. There's Hobbit episode 6. You keep going. It's a relationship. So common is giving up and cowardice. So it takes courage to do this, to return home and challenge. Cowardice. Yeah. And they therefore remain unsuccessful, or therefore, so now This is a little trick. I was going to say unsuccessful as the opposite of success. Now that's not so good because it's just the same word with the word un in front. So that's not as good as that's not as good as having a whole come on. That's not as good as having a whole different word. Let's go like this. There we go. What's common is giving up. And so instead of unsuccessful, we say failure. See how one's framing it in the negative? Unsuccessful. Whereas saying the same thing in the positive is failure. So you can say I'm not sitting, or right now I'm not standing. That's the negative. But I can say the same thing in the positive by saying I am sitting. Thumbs up. That's important. This is a fundamental aspect of midwifery that we will learn more about as we go. But right now we're using it. Therefore, failure to challenge the family pathologos. Now, push the implications. What does that mean? If every human being is here, is necessarily given a pathologos, or given the conditions where we will get a pathologos, carry something false, because we are here to master the dialectic, which has two sides, side A and side B. Midwifery is the dialectic applied to removing the false logos, the pathologos. Platonic philosophy is the dialectic applied to the truth, the spiritual method. Then what happens if most people give up and have cowardice and have failure to do what they're here for? What would follow for that soul if they don't do their job? What will follow for their experience in the afterlife? What will follow for their incarnation? These are questions we can generate and carry with us. Don't have to have answers. We carry them as questions because we're also reading Platonic texts like the Phaedo, which discusses these ideas. Develop a question. What's that require? Courage. Hold on to the question. What does that require? Commitment. What's it called to hold on to a question? To be on a quest. What are we doing? The greatest quest, the paradigm of the quest, or the archetype of the hero's journey. When the word for that in philosophy is destiny. To be stuck here is fate. To do what's common. We want to escape our fate, purification, and discover our destiny, perfection. Purification, perfection, the two aspects of philosophy that Socrates says we're here to do. And he says, by the way, don't believe me. Understand it, remember it, repeat it, talk to your friends about it over coffee as often as you can, and then understand it by framing it into a dialectic, looking for the metaphors, looking for what we're doing here, looking for puzzles and solving them. So common is giving up and cowardice, therefore, let's move this. Cowardice and therefore failure to challenge the family pathologos. Let's go to war instead. Let's defend my cave over your cave. Let's believe in those grifters who use this common way of being to scam us, to get us to act against our benefit. Hey, you know people who look different than you? Yeah. I'm going to allow you to hate on them while I pick your pocket. Are we going to allow ourselves to be scammed by these grifters? Hopefully not. Pathologos. And we could not expect it from the immature. So what's the opposite of that? I don't know. Oh, I guess this is what it means to be. Oh, here we go. We've come to a conclusion. Isn't that interesting? At the end of a dialectic, you often come to a new conclusion, which is a new definition. So we've been doing this. We've been playing the game, looking for one side, doing the other one. The last one was unusual level of commitment and courage to successfully challenge the family pathologos. What's the opposite? What's common is giving up in cowardice and therefore failure to challenge the family pathologos. Okay, what's the last one? We could not expect the positive, this side B over here, from the immature. What's the opposite of that? You can expect it from the immature. That doesn't fit, does it? Hello. We can conclude with a new definition. So for those of you who have come along this journey, congratulations to you. Because we have walked away with a new understanding. Because what's the opposite of this? What do we put in this category over here? Definition of what it means to be immature. We've walked away with this is key. We've been talking about in the text. One of the great questions is, how can we be rational in so many things? We can make mousetraps and nuclear bombs, but why are we so irrational and immature when it comes to ourselves as a species? Why are we not? Why in World War II did our author Pierre Grimes walk the same path that the Romans walked to defeat the barbarians? Why was he walking the literal same path to defeat the Nazi barbarians? Why are we not solving our problems? Why is the Israelis doing a genocide when it happened to them not too long ago? Why are we not learning? Why are we immature? Well, so a key word, question we have that's motivating our quest to master the logos and the pathologos is rationality and maturity. And so having gone through this exercise, we have finished up. We've returned home with an upgrade, a definition of immaturity. What does it mean to be immature? What does it mean to be immature? Easy. I'm going to read this list. To only express yourself in a certain kind of way, imitating what you think is, imitating a false model of beauty, justice, and greatness. That is your role that you've become identified with. That's immaturity. To only express, to really be honest and sincere by imitating the model of your parents that you got from childhood. And only do it in rare situations. That's what it means to be immature. To be mature would be, therefore, reveal yourself in a wide range of ways, often, always. Show yourself. Know yourself and show yourself. What does it mean to be immature? Well, maturity functions as, whenever you do express yourself, especially to people dependent upon you, your injustice would have greater impact. Whoops. These rare moments would have greater negative impact. What's maturity? Well, if you're expressing yourself in a wide range of ways, often and always, then any particular pathologos, which you're going to do because you're human, will have less of an impact. You'll be less unjust towards people, especially the ones in your care or that you love. What is immaturity? To be blindly loyal to appearances of sincerity and beauty that actually lack integrity. Really? Yes. Know any public figures that pretend to be beautiful and sincere, but are lying through their teeth and are ugly as hell? And they lack all integrity? Notice any, but try and give the appearance of the opposite? Notice any people who are blindly loyal to that, even though it lacks integrity? Those people are, by definition, immature. But what does it mean to be mature? To call into question the integrity of those who appeared sincere and beautiful. Challenge appearances. Ask questions. That's what maturity is. Challenge the integrity of appearances. What are you going to be? Immature and blindly, oh, pretty colors, pretty shapes. That's the meme. People who are moved by pretty shapes and colors, they are immature. Wow, beautiful girl next to a beer. I want a beer. Or are you going to ask questions about that? One's immature, one's mature. What's immaturity? Cowardice. And interest in beliefs. What's maturity? Courage and an interest in understanding. What? But I love my beliefs. Yeah, that's immaturity. I believe that Santa. That's immaturity. I believe the Easter Bunny. That's immaturity. Understand. I believe that if we all sing Kumbaya, then magically, no. That's just a belief. Doesn't make it true. That's cowardice. To have courage is to follow understanding. That's maturity. What's immaturity? Oh, I'll tell you what immaturity is. It's common. It's very common. What's maturity? Oh, it's only found rarely. Even among people who are otherwise mature. Ever known someone who respects understanding because he goes to college to, I don't know, learn science, learn physics? But still you bring up Jesus or Noah's Ark or, doesn't matter which religion, just pick one. And all of a sudden he becomes immature. He has cowardice. He won't apply that same courage and interest in understanding that he's propelled his study of physics. He won't apply it to certain things. So even in the otherwise mature, this courage and understanding is rare. Whereas immaturity is common. What's immaturity? Oh, well, it's like most people, never returning to your parents and family and never challenging the pathologos. That's immaturity. You've got two jobs. Do this and then use your freedom from your problems and psychic parasites to find the truth. But both are the dialectic. So you got one job. Do your job. No, I don't want to. Oh yeah, that's because you're immature. Not doing your job. Not returning to your parents and families and never challenging the pathologos. Why? Because I'm scared. Yeah, that's why you need courage. Of course you're scared. Until you're not. Well, what is maturity? Returning to your parents and families and challenging the pathologos. Putting an end to your problems. Putting an end to the cycles of injustice and violence. Becoming a model of maturity. Teaching a new way of being. Doing your job. Maybe even escaping the cycles of reincarnation if you complete your work. That's maturity. What's immaturity? Giving up. Cowardice. Failure to do your job. Failure to do your most important work. Giving up. Cowardice. And therefore failure to challenge the family pathologos. Being a blind, loyal servant to ignorance and injustice in the world, in a tradition, in humanity, and within your soul. That's immaturity, pal. Me. That aspect of ourself that we are identified with, which isn't really ourself. That inner voice that tells us to stay loyal to what's comfortable and familiar. What's common. Cowardice, belief. Holding on to our dear false images of beauty, goodness, greatness that all lack integrity. That's immaturity. That's giving up, and that's failure to do what's most important. That's immaturity. What's maturity? Oh, an unusual level of commitment and courage to actually successfully challenging the family pathologos, actually becoming free. Actually reaching a level of freedom that isn't even met by, well, almost anyone. This is the only way of gaining freedom. Even enlightenment experiences don't do this. enlightenment experience is part of the logos. It's not the only part. You have to also understand and go beyond experience and integrate it into an art. There's lots more than just experience. Enlightenment isn't just an experience. But even that's not even anything to do with this. Why we have the archetypes of the sages or gurus who still have their problems. Many in quite a lot of force, by the way. The drunken master, the pervy sage, and so on and so on. What are they? Immature. Oh, don't tell their followers, they'll get mad. Or say it in a funny way. Or a charming way. Maturity. What is maturity again? An unusual level of commitment and courage to understanding, to returning to your parents and families, to challenging the pathologos. That's rare. To challenging the integrity of false appearances, to expressing yourself often and in all possible ways, culminating in a successful challenge and purification from the family pathologos. That's what it means to be mature. What's immaturity? Immaturity, oh, that's easy. Let me tell you what immaturity is. Immaturity is only expressing yourself in a certain way when you're really telling the truth. Think you're telling the truth. Copying a kind of model, what you think is knowing, and only doing it rarely. So that the times when you do blow up or whatever have an impact on people who are dependent on you. That's immaturity. You're an immature parent. You're an immature model. Immaturity is also having blindly loyal to appearances of sincerity and beauty that actually lack integrity. That's what it means to be immature. Hey, the Nazis were blindly loyal to Hitler, weren't they? Blind loyalty, is that a mark of immaturity? By the way, immaturity is cowardice and being interested in beliefs as opposed to understanding. Oh, and by the way, immaturity is common because most people are immature and therefore never return back to their family and parents and never challenge the pathologos, which is really immature thing to do. It's a really immature thing to give up on because it's common to give up. That's a mark of immaturity. Immaturity is giving up and cowardice and failure to actually challenge the family pathologos. That's what it means to be immature. So now we can judge when we're being immature and do our best to practice with commitment. Again, you're not right straight away. You're in this side, whether you like it or not, you start over here. Whoops. You start over here. We can't expect children to be like brilliant Socrates-like people. We start over here. The difference now is we have the call to adventure. We have been developing the supernatural, or the new kind of ability, like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker. That's the logos. We have been developing understanding, which gives us what we need to practice with commitment. That's going to take courage. That's going to mean we question appearances, especially of sincerity and beauty, which means we reveal ourselves in a wide range of ways, often as we can. Show yourself. Know yourself and show yourself. Now that's an unusual level of commitment. But if we practice it with the commitment, following understanding, with courage, challenging and questioning appearances, sacrificing cowardice, sacrificing our beliefs, sacrificing our beloved appearances. If we sacrifice this immaturity and we practice with this commitment and courage and understanding, maturity, we have the possibility of doing our job and successfully challenging the pathologos. That's our destiny. That's what awaits us if we stay practicing this in a relationship. Recognize the counterattacks. Recognize when we go into here, but that's okay so long as you keep going back. and eventually you're going to be in this way. We have a greater understanding of where we're headed. We have a greater understanding of what it means to be on this task. And we have unified our process in a single word: maturity. What's that? Taking the many into the one, which is a definition, which is the first category of the dialectic, and also one of the things we talked about last time. How do we go from the many to the one? Well, that was an example. We push the implications, we look for a pattern, we use metaphor to look for patterns to solve it. It took time, it took patience, it took wonder, it took curiosity, it took courage, it took commitment. There's only there's only a few of us in the live stream, so a rare group of people. But we've walked away benefited. We've walked away having leveled up. We've walked away with a oneness that makes sense of the manyness of what we're doing. Maturity. We walked away with a new understanding, a definition of what it means to be mature, what we are practicing every single moment. Because you're either doing a dialectic of immaturity or practicing maturity. You can't not be doing it. The real question is, well, the question at the start of the podcast that we said the only real question you can ask is, do you want to do it as a slave, blindly loyal to what's false, playing out a dialectic, integrating a false belief into your identity, way of being, your role, your mannerisms? Or do you want to do it consciously? But after having gone through what we went through together, we can say the only real question is, do you want to be doing what you're doing immaturely or practicing maturity? Pretty neat. On that note, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you're enjoying the game. I hope you're excited and you're wondering about this challenge to play the game with maturity. I hope you find a way of remembering these aspects that we've pulled out, maybe a mnemonic device of some kind, repeating it, practicing it, to get this definition of maturity and immaturity ingrained into your being, to see through it. Because it's key. That's one of our questions. Why are we so irrational and immature when it comes to selves? That's the human question. That's where we are at our development of our species and where we are as people integrated into this part of history, ourselves. Well, hey, now we know what maturity is. Well, knowledge isn't the right word. We have a pretty good hypothesis we can carry with us. So, I hope you're wondering. I hope you carry that hypothesis. I hope you remember it. I hope you share it with people who you can also maybe invite on this journey. People who might also be interested in this development of maturity, playing the game they're playing anyway, only with maturity. And I hope you're excited by the idea of becoming more mature. Thank you for joining me. As always, you can follow on YouTube. Click the bell if you want to get notifications when we go live so you can participate, ask questions in the chat. You can follow on Twitch. You can join the Discord to build a relationship with people who are also on this quest. And thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye. It's my mature face.